Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, once again joined by Zepsi. We both do some contract work for the HBAR Foundation, but we don't do these weekly updates in any official capacity. We're just coming to you personally to give you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. Welcome, Zep.
How's it going, Brandon?
It's going good. As always, though, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So, Zeb, of course, we had some huge news this week. We had Mondelez joining the Hedera Governing Council. They already have a use case that they've announced. We're going to be getting into that pretty soon, but I'm actually going to start off with something else, shockingly. It's what I've been teasing for a while, and it has to do with airdrops within the Hedera ecosystem. Now, we've had airdrops going on. People have been testing them out. They've mainly done them one of two ways. They've either just done a blanket airdrop where they say, associate my token, and every single account that does that, they send an equal amount of that token. Or they have an NFT airdrop where they have, say, get this NFT, whatever it may be, one of the popular NFTs in our space. You associate our HTS token, you have that NFT in your wallet, and you get whatever HTS token they're airdropping. That can certainly help the NFT market for whatever NFT is in your wallet. But there's another way to do it, and Earthlings is going to be the first ones to do it. Earthlings, of course, is a gaming metaverse that's building within our space. They have a really exciting game. They already have some sidekick games that have come out on Android. But what they're doing is an HBAR weighted airdrop. So these are pretty much the steps. First, you're going to associate three tokens. PH Steam, which is a precursor to Steam. You're going to have to associate both of those, PH Steam and Steam. Eventually, you're going to be able to take those Steam and on their website, trade them out and get Steam, which is going to be their in-game currency. And then the third token you have to associate is going to be an NFT specifically for this airdrop. Once you've done that, they're at an undisclosed time going to take a snapshot. And the things they're going to check are making sure those three tokens are associated, and then how much HBAR you have in your wallet. And then a little later on down the line, they are going to drop the NFT and they are going to drop the PH Steam or Steam into your wallet based off of commensurate with the amount of HBAR you have in your wallet. So, of course, this incentivizes HBAR holders. First of all, the entire ecosystem has been built on the foundation of HBAR holders. So they just generally deserve incentives like this. So I love this all around, but it has more strategic reasons that I think it's important than just that. Number one, HBAR is the most strategic asset in our space. It's the numeraire within the DeFi ecosystem, right? So the most liquid pools in DeFi are always paired with HBAR, whether it's Sauce HBAR, whether it's Calaxy HBAR, Karate HBAR, go down the line. Those are the most liquid pools. So the stronger the HBAR market is, the stronger those pools are going to be, and the stronger our DeFi ecosystem is going to be. Also, it's the most liquid on and off ramp. So if you were going to buy one of our popular HTS tokens, and those tokens are becoming more popular all the time, you're going to go to one of the centralized exchanges. You're going to go to Coinbase or Binance. You're going to buy the HBAR. You're going to send them to your wallet that you're using for DeFi, and then interact with one of our dexes to buy one of those tokens. And then later on down the line, who knows, you might want to sell one of those tokens. So off-ramping is also important. You're going to sell those in one of those very liquid pools. You're going to sell that token for HBAR. You're going to send it to the centralized exchange, sell for your local currency, put it in your bank account, and have fun. So our DeFi ecosystem is very dependent on the health of the HBAR market. So incentivizing HBAR holdings is certainly important there. Also, we have lending. Now, we haven't had a lot of lending yet within the Hedera ecosystem because we don't have lending platforms. But I was just talking with a team that's working with Headstarter. They're going to be starting a lending protocol on Hedera. I know that the HBAR Foundation is laser focused on this as well. So we are going to have lending. Now, lending, normally what you do is you borrow whatever asset is, and then you go speculate with it. You go trade with it. And that's always going to be a cornerstone of a healthy lending market. But if you have these kind of HBAR weighted airdrops, it can make that lending ecosystem that much more vibrant. So we'll say that there's a project that you want to participate in that's doing one of these HBAR weighted airdrops, but you don't have enough HBAR. You can go into one of these lending protocols, borrow the HBAR, and then participate in that airdrop. And then after a few weeks, however long it takes to take the snapshot and all that kind of stuff, you can return the HBAR. Now, the person on the other side of that trade can be looking at it and say, I don't want to necessarily participate in this airdrop, so I'm going to lend my HBAR out. I'm going to get a little bit of a yield for those few weeks, and that's what makes a market, right? Also, it's the utility. So it's going to be very important for Earthlings and everyone else. We've seen what Karate has done to try to get people to get their token, to get their application and participate in up-only gaming. And they've done all kinds of promotions to do this. The largest user base within our ecosystem is, of course, HBAR holders. So this is going to be the best way to get those tokens into people's hands to be able to use them. Now, I want this to be a culture shift. I want this to be the first of many. I want this to be a trend within the Hedera ecosystem. And that's another thing that I think is an important point. We want to respect these airdrops and the tokens that we receive through these airdrops if it continues. Because if we want to get more of them, we want to make sure, again, we treat them with respect. That means just not dumping the token or something along those lines. At very least, the ones that I'm going to promote are going to have some kind of product attached to them, whether that's a consumer engagement or a gaming token or one that's associated with an NFT marketplace or something along those lines. At very least, go and use their product if you get these tokens. That's what the tokens are for. They're used for fuel for these different networks. Also, it's great promotion. It's great promotion for the team itself and their product. And it's also great promotion for the Hedera ecosystem. Again, if we can create a trend with this, it's come to the Hedera ecosystem and you can participate in these airdrops. We have this very vibrant HTS token ecosystem that has great products coming out on a regular basis, and we're going to give you some skin in the game if you come on over. But Zep, I've been talking about it for a while. What are your thoughts on this initiative?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think having this sort of culture shift within Hedera is very important, but we're coming to the right moment for it, right? Like there hasn't been, I don't think, the demand for the HTS economy or the DeFi economy in the past, but now we seem to be in a very strong position whereby these kind of airdrops with very strong teams can bring in external liquidity and again benefit the users that are already here. Prime example, like you mentioned, Earthlings, by helping those who have been in the ecosystem for a long time. There is so much to be looking forward to that I think hasn't been made that clear by the foundation. There has been a lot of community members saying, where are the oracles? Where are the lending? This kind of thing. But I know for a fact there's oracles in the works and there's lending solutions, like you mentioned, through the HBAR Foundation. So we really are, I think, going to have these sort of additional infrastructure that we're currently missing so that this DeFi economy can thrive, like you said, and then, sort of be boosted by these airdrops and additional incentives. So that leads me to Hashpack, right? The backbone of DeFi, the backbone of NFTs on Hedera, without that infrastructure, these economies really wouldn't be anywhere near where they are today. And so Hashpack have come out yesterday saying that they're launching their own HTS pack token. And for me, I don't think that could be any more exciting, right? They've got the most active users within that wallet ecosystem. They're at the heart of the community. They're an extremely respected and competent team within the ecosystem. There's a lot of faith behind them. And so there's no doubt that the execution behind this token launch, the reasoning for it, will mirror exactly what they've done so far. So a really, really exciting one to look out for. We haven't had, the information in yet, the additional information on what it looks like, but I'm sure you'll have May or Arthur or Pluto, whoever it might be, coming on soon. And, we'll learn more about that economy moving forwards. But very excited for that token. Very excited for lending, oracles, and DeFi in general on Hedera.
Yeah, Hashpack doesn't miss. So I'm sure whatever this token is, it's going to have tremendous value. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and get into the big story of Mondelez, the giant within the confectionery space, joining the Hedera Governing Council. So just to explain, Mondelez is an American food, beverage, and snack food company. They're number 108 on the Fortune 500 list. They had $36 billion worth of revenue in 2023. They have a $96 billion market cap. They have 91,000 employees operating in 160 countries. And their famous brands include Nabisco, Chips Ahoy, Oreo, Ritz, Dentine, Trident, Cadbury, Philadelphia cream cheese, and more. And Zep, just like all new council members at this point, they all come with a use case. Now, we had SKUX on last week, and we're actually going to have an exclusive with Bobby next week to talk about the mechanics of exactly what they're doing with Mondelez. But that said, there was a really good gossip about gossip with Zenobia, and there was some discussion about how they're going to be using SKUX. So let's check that out, and then we'll come back to it.
And can you talk to us a little bit about how you first learned about Hedera and then your journey and decision to join the governing council?
Yes, I think back to August last year, 2023, and as we walking through one of those digital transformation from a traditional paper coupon, right? We're rewarding consumer with coupons on paper-based reimbursement process. And we look at one of those vendors out there, SKUX, one of them, who providing a transformation for paper coupon into digital coupon base, right? Basically, we're talking about a 7 to 10 days business conversion into a 20 seconds. So this is very, very, very interesting and encouraging. We had multiple session with SKUX exploring those technology going forward. And with that engagement, POC we built and very successful. And we really create this momentum within the company from a traditional business process and business governance model into a complete new way to engage consumer. So with that, and we learned the underneath technology is Hedera DLTs. And I think with that past 6 months, almost like 6 months in POC, we truly tested and leveraged the infrastructure. We also think it's a scalable business environment. And this is very important. I think at the end of the day, we want to reach the consumer beyond just North America or Latin America. We want to reach it globally. In order to do that, a scalable infrastructure is a very important aspect for us.
And so you mentioned SKUX. They are, sort of a partner that has helped you on this journey, it sounds like.
Exactly. SKUX, if I'm not wrong, is one of those leading application built on top DLT, Hedera DLT layer, and they have a variety of applications running right now. As for now, we're just building a first POC on those digital coupon side, but we also explore eventually future cross-border payment, digital payment. So those type of things going to be all part of this digital economy going forward, and we are very open and we want to explore opportunities and to see whether we can build a future digital strategy pipeline. That's our main focus.
That's fantastic. And I want to go back to just that first, POC that you're talking about. With coupons, it seems like there's two key benefits there, both in terms of, having that direct connection that you talked about with the consumer and learning more about their habits and what they like, but also potentially reducing fraud. I think a lot of us have seen some of the movies and other depictions of how coupons can be fraudulently used and potentially hurt the brands that are trying to offer these savings.
Yeah, so this is one of those kind of important valuation process, right? Because we just don't want a say, okay, we achieve a huge goal as a move for a paper-based 7 to 10 days process. We don't even have insight after the coupons are redeemed by consumer. Now we have a 20 seconds redeem process. We understand how the consumers redeem, which retail store they're going in, which product they're buying. We have a complete insight. But beyond that, as you mentioned, fraud prevention is one of the key things, right? We've been doing that in the past many. So the reimbursement process is one of those kind of the aftershock. We're also dealing with our consumer, right? We reimburse those consumer because of fraud. So the ultimate removing of fraud, right? Really 100% prevention of fraud going forward because of digital ledger, which we're building and have a secure and also encrypted process to validate an end user to the specific link. It's a tremendous benefit. So we're promoting internally within the Mondelez, not just for the digital coupon, but it's also for other use cases, because the fraud prevention is one of the key measurement we've been putting in place in the entire consumer engagement journey. We've been doing that for past 20 and 30 years.
So, Zep, I suggest everybody go watch that entire Gossip About Gossip. I'm really looking forward to talking to Bobby next week. But, Zep, what are your thoughts on this edition of Mondelez?
Yeah, I mean, some people might recognize the name better if I say Kraft Foods. And so Kraft Foods was the former name of Mondelez, which is, now is under the name of Mondelez. But Kraft Foods was like a giant, it's like every single, I used to do business when I was younger at school, and all the examples would always lead back to Kraft Foods, right? Especially in Europe, absolutely massive. And so they became Mondelez, and Mondelez account for 33% of the global confectionery market alone, just the confectionery. And so when you think of the scope of that supply chain, that global supply chain, right, I think it's over 150 countries it's in, that just reiterates how Hedera is best fit for these large scale use cases, right? We've seen supply chain be mentioned over and over and over again, whether it's sustainability or, carbon emissions tracking, or now we're seeing with sort of this consumer packaged goods and the payment based offers associated with it. Either way, these supply chain use cases are going to be some of the biggest scale use cases in the world. HBAR is the biggest DLT use case actively at the moment by TPS. And this goes back to what I think Charles Adkins said when he came over, which was, Hedera is the best fit, is the leader in these extremely high throughput, almost mission critical enterprise applications, which is what we've known from the start, of course. But this is just another crown, another jewel on the crown, rather. And I think this is one of those use cases that we're going to see scale over time, of course. But it's also, they mentioned, it's one of their first use cases. So it seems like they've got other things up their sleeves. The same thing that we heard with Hitachi when they joined. So it seems like this is going to be a very, very valuable addition to the governing council.
So, Zeb, what I love about Mondelez here is it's a completely new industry. We didn't have it within the Hedera ecosystem yet. And of course, if you have promotions and all this stuff that's going to be going on with SKUX on the scale of Mondelez, it's going to be absolutely huge. But we're going to take one of our hard left turns here. We're going to get into Calaxy, our creators Galaxy. You're one of our experts on it. Can you tell us about some of the metrics they're seeing coming out of Calaxy recently?
Sure. So Calaxy, i.e. the social wallets, have launched version 1.5 of the Calaxy app. And this enables sort of text onboarding. You can directly message a friend from within the app. You give them a referral link. They sign up. They actually get a small airdrop of, I think, about $15 worth of Calaxy. And then the person who referred it also gets their own airdrop for facilitating that onboarding. And so in the last sort of 4 days since Calaxy version 1.5 launched, they've got a new additional 20,000 users from this. And as Solo said, the majority of these are active. When an airdrop thing like this happens or a referral program, you're going to get a lot of users coming in. Some of them will be very active to begin with, but some of them won't be over time. And so I know that the team at Calaxy are actively analyzing this. They're seeing exactly what regions they're coming from. And loads of them are coming from exactly where you want them to be coming from, i.e., sort of higher demographics in the US, UK, whereby these referrals are less of a farming procedure and more of sort of a organic, I'm going to invite my friend, see them to get the value proposition and move in, rather than sort of a mass mobile farming scheme. And so they've got a lot of new users in there. A lot of them are high quality. And of course, this is exactly what we want from the Calaxy team in terms of that onboarding Web 2 to Web 3 and making that as frictionless as possible, which has always been their sort of task from the outset. So really excited to see how much uptake this campaign has already had. And, there's another sort of 27 days left of it. They're continuously going to be analyzing it, as I said, optimizing for different geographies and so on. So I really think we could have a massive, massive user base by the end of this campaign.
It's really impressive. I can't say enough about Calaxy. It's such a great user experience all the way around. But we are going to change gears here. Again, we're going to get into our refi ecosystem. And I would say that there's not a single space where Hedera is leading more than the refi ecosystem. Now, I don't think you see that a lot because there's so many parts and pieces that have to be put in place before it can really take off. But last week, we saw that one of our refi teams, Tolam, started to have NFTs that were being traded or transferred on the Hedera network. And I wanted to get some more information on that. So I contacted the Tolam team and I got in touch with Matthew. He's the president over there to give us some more information. So check it out. Matt, welcome.
Hey, Brendan. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. We're going to jump right into it. Matthew, to start, can you tell us about the origins and goals for Tolam Earth?
Yeah, sure. So Tolam Earth is effectively a platform where digital environmental assets, such as carbon credits, such as biodiversity assets, can be exchanged, traded, retired, and managed. And really, we began the company because we saw that within the voluntary carbon marketplace, which is something that we think is very important, something that we think is going to really help the climate crisis that we have, the actual voluntary carbon market was somehow stuck. The trades were not going as people expected because it was very difficult to understand what the assets were, understand the ecological veracity of those assets. So we started Tolam to try and help that problem. And in fact, that's also how we found the HBAR Sustainable Impact Fund, so the SIF fund within HBAR, because actually they had the same goals and aspirations. So we were very well matched. So that's how we first started to work together with HBAR. So as we started to address that challenge, we also realized that there was another challenge that actually we hadn't really understood before we began. And that is that there's a whole problem around financial equity within the trading of these assets as well. So in the end, you can consider a lot of the origination of these assets comes from perhaps small holdings, small farms, projects in less wealthy nations. And the buyers are typically very wealthy corporations, often in North America or Europe. So there's some kind of disparity between buyers and sellers. And within the middle of that, there was kind of some cowboy-like activity. So perhaps a lot of the finance that was being generated wasn't going back to those projects. So there's a whole financial equity problem that needed solving as well. And actually, that's a problem that also leans itself very well to the Sustainable Impact Fund technology that's been developed and the Hedera Hashgraph itself. So actually, we were in an ideal place to also begin to work on that problem too.
Well, I'm really happy that you guys found each other because it seems like you're doing some exciting things. So we've noticed Tolam NFTs starting to hit the Hedera network. Specifically, these are entitled Tolam Non-Digital No KYC tokens. Can you tell us about these tokens and what they'll be used for?
Yep, so those tokens are actually carbon credits. So each NFT represents 1 ton of carbon that's either been extracted from the atmosphere or has been avoided. So it basically something has happened to stop it going into the atmosphere. And there are that's the product will be exchanged on our platform, and that's our initial sales effectively. So those credits are going to 2 different customers. One is a kind of events management company. So as they hold events, they are tracking the amount of carbon that's being generated, people flying to the event, kind of participating in the activities they have. And then they're buying carbon credits to offset that. And then the second is a manufacturing company. So as things are manufactured through a production flow, it kind of moves along some process. And as each step in the process is completed, they also quantify the amount of carbon that's generated. And interestingly, they also tokenize that. And then they can buy credits to offset that token. And here it gets super interesting because there's an opportunity in the future to actually match those tokens very directly, which means that if you then buy those goods, you will have a full set of data with Trust Chain all the way from the carbon origination to the carbon credit origination that offsets it effectively. So you'll know exactly what carbon was created and what was done to negate that carbon in the atmosphere, which is a really useful data set for consumers, for onward flow into the supply chain, etc. So no, we're really happy about our initial kind of customer partners.
So Matthew, the next thing I was going to ask about is, when is your marketplace going to be fully up and running? Does this mean that you're already fully up and running, or do you have some further steps to take before you're to your final goal?
We have lots of things to do, but we are up and running. So the two kind of projects I've talked about are channel partners. So effectively, we have the platform, and then they're the marketplace that sits on our platform. So the customer interacts with those channel partners and not directly with Tolam. Now, Tolam is also developing its own storefront, so to speak. Some applications don't need that channel partnership. They just want to buy directly from Tolam. So we'll be generating our own marketplace and then increasingly bring on other channel partners or storefronts onto the platform. I think in the end, the way that people consume carbon will be hugely different across different applications. Some people will be kind of corporate buyers trying to buy carbon to meet their 2030 or whatever goals it might be. Other people are more like the case I've already described, where they're incrementally buying it on an almost daily basis to try and match their carbon emissions. So I think our kind of goal is to enable that. It's kind of too difficult for one company to try and cater for that whose set of use cases. So we kind of work with channel partners to bring those different applications on board.
So you're talking about the demand side as being your customer. Do you consider both of them being your customer and the supply side as well?
Yep. So we have customers on both sides. Now, if we think about how we're going to market and the challenges we have, I think a lot of the challenges are on the demand side, because actually what we do is enabling the supply side to enable those projects to actively articulate the value they bring, to describe the additional kind of value through sustainable development goals, through the way that they've originated the projects, through the communities they support. So they've been kind of crying out for something like Tolam for a long time, to be able to distinguish themselves from people who are perhaps just kind of creating a huge wind farm or whatever, and is kind of just basing kind of relatively cheap offsets. At the moment, people are often considering a carbon credit to be a single thing. It's kind of like a commodity, but actually there's huge differences in the way that they're made, in the social and kind of community efforts they support, and also the environmental impact that they bring. So we allow those supply side partners to articulate that to get a higher price and to really distinguish themselves in the market. So the supply side has been easier to bring people on board to work with Tolam. The demand side is more difficult because a lot of companies are wary, I would say, of buying carbon credits because there's been negative publicity, because they bought the wrong things in the past. They've bought credits that have not actually had the environmental impact they promote, that have perhaps been more a financial transaction rather than a climate transaction. So their people, or those side is effectively more difficult to convince, because they really need to see the data to show that they've got the receipts to prove that what they're buying is true. So yeah, I think that's where we are at the moment. We have a lot of high quality supply, and now we're now starting to bring in the demand as well.
Well, you're certainly bringing a product to market that needed that extra layer of trust. Matthew, is there anything else you'd like to pass on before we let you
go? I think just for the context of the discussion, we would like to thank HBAR and the Sustainable Impact Fund. It turns out that the challenge we've taken on is enormous, and it would be completely overwhelming for one company to try and think about all the things to bring on project finance, to think about all the things that brings that ecological trust to the asset, to bring on kind of payment flows that are highly auditable and traceable as well. So really, we're working within a set of ecosystem partners that we call the Coalition of the Willing. It's certainly a different atmosphere to previous startups I've had that are very competitive, and it's kind of like one company's going to win. There's a very collaborative approach, and it's really needed because the size of the challenge we have is so big.
So a big shout out to Wes and the rest of the SIF team there. Matthew, thank you so much for coming on and explaining Tolam. So, Zep, it seems like it's been a long time since we've been talking about the Hedera refi ecosystem, about all the parts that had to be put in place before it could start to take off. And now that we're starting to see it impact the network, even on this small scale, it's exciting to see. All right, so with that, we're going to go ahead and get into Shark Bites. We got some really good questions this week. We only could go through a couple of them, but we also got some insights from Rob on the HBAR Airdrop. So let's check it out. All right, Rob, we've had some pretty long episodes recently. This one is going to be a little bit shorter today, but welcome back.
Hey, Brandon. Yeah, true shark bite today, but a couple of big meaty questions that I'm going to have to keep down to a bite-sized chunk, which is always a challenge for me who likes the sound of my own voice.
Well, the community loves everything that you come out with. So, Rob, I'm going to start with not necessarily a question, but I was just curious about something. Rob, you and I are advisors for the studio that's putting out the gaming metaverse Earthlings. They also just launched their first Sidekick game. They call them Sidekick games on Android called Steam Runner. But today we're going to talk about them as an HTS token issuer. Earthlings is introducing a new way of distributing some of their tokens. At least it's new within the Hedera ecosystem, an HBAR weighted airdrop. What do you think about their new initiative?
Well, hopefully this is the first of many because it's genius. And I know you're instrumental in many of the concepts here, but in order that everyone loves an airdrop, and all the other ecosystems, are kind of starting to pick up airdrops again. We're seeing it across, the Twitter sphere and X, and my feeds and the algorithms seem to be targeting me with all sorts of airdrops, and I'm sure everyone is the same. We don't really have that many, right? And I think it's a bit of a gap. The ability to do airdrops is kind of fundamental to the Web3 space. It creates energy, it creates community feeling, it creates the need to hold. And that obviously, drives price dynamics. So, for this initiative and for Earthlings, the team who I absolutely love, to be doing this, it's great. I know you've gone into a lot of the details, so I won't kind of repeat. But I've joined the advisory team for Earthlings for one reason and one reason only. I think it's an excellent product. The team is amazing, and the game is going to be so beautiful and immersive. Right? Actually, that's three things. But these little innovations like this airdrop and some of the stuff that we'll be seeing over the coming weeks related to it are just going to attract a lot of attention, I think. And then this tweak on the airdrop, for the Steam token or the PHT Steam token, related to the holding level for HBAR, that's the genius twist. So I'm really excited to see what the response from the community is, being able to, or having to associate 3 tokens and hold a level of HBAR in your wallet gets you access to all of this airdrop goodness. And then you attract people who may not have seen the game or may, suddenly be drawn to the collectability of the NFTs or the playability of the, these sidekick games, like you said. Or the token economy or the potential for a token economy within this game. And I know Patrick doesn't like calling it a metaverse, but it's actually an immersive environment where you have digital assets that you hold that are crafted in a beautiful way. And it's family friendly as well. So you've got this kind of really great environment. The full game, as we know, is some way off because it takes a while to create these fully immersive games. But they're doing exactly the right thing to engage and build a community from the outset. And I have to say, full disclosure, I've absolutely FOMO'd in since knowing or learning more about the team, Patrick and the team, and yourself and Milan, people I trust, are kind of associated with the this project. So I think I can only add a small amount of value, but it's great to be part of that extended team and support this really great initiative.
Now, Rob, I've said this before, but when I look at the scenes from Earthlings, it looks like someplace that I would like to live. And it just popped into my head with Apple Vision Pro just going live. Can you imagine what it's going to be like when you can enter these environments using the Apple Vision Pro?
Yeah. And why would you want to leave, right? And this is Ready Player One, coming to life. And the relevance there is that, the likes of Sandbox and Decentraland and the other chains, metaverse environments are really clunky, and people, like the idea, but, sort of dip in and come out again. I think this could really be, the place that people want to go and stay and spend time gaming or socially or interacting with the assets that one actually owns, because this is true Web3. So, it's an evolving world, which is great to see. And one of the things that I'm most interested in, and I say this quite a lot, is how these communities kind of interact. We've seen a few partnerships, a few things in the past around the Hangry Baboons, and I think it was the Rebels, wasn't it, or something that did some great stuff with the things a while ago. But Web3 means collaboration. Web3 is about, being able to transfer assets and interact in new and innovative ways that potentially haven't even been envisaged when the project was, defined and scoped at the outset. So that's where I think things are going to get really interesting. And I've seen some of the art around the sharks, and there are towns, they're water towns. So, I'm kind of all in, as it were, in trying to just add some perspective and value. So not that I have very much spare time, but I like the ethos of this project very much.
One of the things that I really like is, we have Karate Combat, we have Calaxy, we have Earthlings. These are all have the potential to be killer apps. I don't know which one it's going to be, but I like the fact that within the Hedera ecosystem, we have so many that could potentially be those killer apps.
Well, why does it have to be one, right? The killer apps,
well, of course, yes.
That you've kind of referred to very different types of app. I think they all have one thing in common, of course, and that's Hedera. And they're all built on a network infrastructure that allows so many different things to operate in a way that is very, very slick, and doesn't hit those constraints of the trilemma at all. So it allows the innovative entrepreneurs to build exactly what they envisage. Like Lehman Bed said all those years ago, just carve out a piece of the internet and, invite people to join them in their own shared world. This is what we're seeing, right? And Earthlings, I think, is a very good example of a shared world.
Great points. Now, this next guy, I'm sure he knows that our number one token is always going to be HBAR, but Johnny Echo asks, what's your second and third favorite cryptos? Now, I'm not going to ask you what your favorites are. We have so many great tokens, whether they're fungible or non-fungible, but what are some of the tokens besides HBAR that have piqued your interest?
Well, I'm not allowed to shill any coins or tokens, and I'm not a financial advisor. I just know what I like. It's like art, right? You know what you like. I buy tokens. I buy HTS tokens, and I've got a nice little portfolio of them. But I do it really because it forces me to have skin in the game. It forces me to actually be interested in a project and work within that project. So, whether it be Bank Social. I was really interested in how the bank's social dynamics work, and was and am interested in continuing to see that develop, because I've got a financial services background. They're talking a lot about the sorts of things that has been discussed for the longest time about how Web3 might kind of disrupt financial services. So, I think that's the reason I've got BSL. I'm also a bit of a muso, right? So I've been following Tune FM for some time, and the Jam token. I actually originally was uncertain about why they would create a token. Why not just use an HBAR? But I think they've kind of built that utility into their token economy now. So being holding Jam means that I'm kind of now I maintain my interest in that project as it grows. I won't mention karate because you do it enough. But I think it's a really good example. But Calaxy, something similar, right? It's a social media platform that is fueled by a token. And these token economies are super important for Web3 infrastructure. It's not just the technology, it's community. And community is both incentivized and bound by economy. And so the token economy for that community is it's really important that it's designed properly, it's implemented properly, and it's trusted. So all of those things kind of are what I look for in tokens. I mean, there's a list in my bags, but Dovu as well, of course. I think Dovu is a really interesting one because although Dovu has been a bit like Bank Social, right? It's been around for a few years, and then they've kind of found Hedera, and they built building platforms and then migrating, or burning and then reminting. But the Dovu is that kind of manifestation of what we wanted to see in the Guardian ecosystem. And they're building tools, and I think they need to be supported. So all of these projects absolutely need supporting, and it's got to be community support, I think, that drives them to the next level, even if they've previously had grants. And not all of them have, right? Some of these are kind of homegrown, founder-funded, driven by this desire and intent to do something better. And that's, those are the best kinds of founders. Although I would like to see some of them a little bit more supported by the institutions of the ecosystem. And I guess finally, what's my other really? So I'm interested in H Suite. So I just because it's smart contract free from an architectural engineering perspective, very interested in the difference between the smart contract driven parts of the DeFi ecosystem and what H Suite can bring to that as well. So, whereas Source is the driver for Source Swap with H Suite on that platform, it kind of gives me the ability to compare and contrast and, the different interactions and experiences. So, those are my bags. What about yours? You can't mention karate.
Oh, I've gone through my list. Zep and I went through a long list, and that's going to continue to get added to as more exciting things come out.
Well, and that's the thing, every week you got, well, not maybe every week, every month you're seeing new tokens released as these projects get to that point in their maturity. I mean, I avoid tokens that are issued, upfront without any utility or any understanding of what they're for, because it's so easy to issue tokens on Hedera. It doesn't really demonstrate any longevity in the project. So it's always good to see a platform or a game or some other kind of solution kind of finding its product market fit, and then understanding how the token economy works within that community. That's the point that I kind of like to engage.
And we've been focusing on retail-facing applications, the fun stuff today, but maybe later on down the line we can talk about some of the more stuffy things that are out there, the stable coins and the tokens that represent the carbon credits and all that kind of stuff.
What's stuffy about stable coins? That's the life.
It's revolutionizing the world. It really is for a lot of third world places and things like that.
Yeah, no, we could do a whole shark bite on USDC, on Hedera, and the stablecoin studio and those tokens, because the financial grade stable coins and other type of asset-backed tokens is really, really important to how this operates. In fact, there's a question coming up. I might address it in that.
Absolutely. Well, this next one, we're going to be zooming out a bit. Sure. It comes from Crypto Mally. He asks, how do you envision the evolution of distributed ledger technology impacting global economic systems and governance structures over the next decade? And what role will Hedera Hashgraph play in fostering that transformation?
Wow. Just wow.
It's a big one.
In a shark bite. That's the challenge here. So, obviously this is a full TED Talk, series of TED Talks kind of subject. So I'm not going to address it as holistically as maybe I might. But some of the thinking that we're going through in this, is that where we have been talking about, Web3 is the future, and then we were saying, well, Web3 is inevitable. Now it's about Web3 is happening. Web3 is now. And we're in the middle of this evolution, and globally, it's evolving at different paces, and it's usually inhibited by resource and regulation. right? So that community and the friendliness of the jurisdiction within which they're operating. Albeit this is a global tech, so you get quite a lot of fluidity in terms of resourcing and regulatory arbitrage as well. So that mix is really, really interesting. And at the technology layer, everything is evolving, right? So, and we're seeing some of the biggest players in the world in terms of financial services infrastructure and the support to economies. They've been experimenting with blockchain tech for 10 years now. Visa and MasterCard have been kind of toying with this, Visa in particular, but MasterCard latterly, for many years. We've got now PayPal issuing its own stablecoin. You've got most of the world's central banks working on CBDC projects, some of which have come to production. Many are focusing on wholesale, so wholesale banking relationships, but some are now extending into the retail end, so citizens can have access effectively to central bank money and central bank security for their funds. The trade-offs, of course, are the well-documented, loss of privacy, surveillance, etc., potentially. So all these trade-offs. But the engine room of the technology is driving this. And what then emerges is the lag of the regulation. So this inhibitor that the regulatory jurisdiction applies to the development of that technology. So here in Australia, we've seen banks, our own member banks of Australian Payments Plus issuing stablecoins. They've been the Australian New Zealand Bank at ANZ and National Australia Bank NAB. We've seen one of our other four majors doing a lot since in the bond markets and other kind of blockchain experiments since 2016, 2017. So those are just one country. Every country has banks who are kind of issuing stablecoins or tokenized deposits or other asset-backed tokens, which like carbon credits for tokenized assets that they can then trade on that or sell to their institutional customers. That engine room, that layer above the technology development, is kind of the financial services, the economic layer. That's that's largely driven by the jurisdictional regulations, and so banks being regulated institutions can only move so fast. The next layer is this really exciting, what used to be fintech, but actually is now many things, the disruptive layer that can actually use the technology, but then sort of use it to augment and disrupt and challenge the TradFi ecosystem. So that's happening as well, right? So we've got all of these different elements just changing. And then the last layer, or the next layer, I guess, is fully decentralized finance, so DeFi. And I guess you've got the degens outside of that. But the DeFi is then kind of being incorporated into the layers below it and actually driving the innovation as well, but also is kind of riskier. Everyone knows all of this. There's nothing new in this. What is key here, I think, and key to the questioner is, where can Hedera be applied? And it's unusually for most of these layer one protocols is that it can be applied at every layer, right? So we've got CBDCs, we've got central bank platforms and sandboxes like MTech driving that discovery process. We've got Stablecoin Studio, we've got banks issuing and publicly have stated that they're issuing using Stablecoin Studios. They're experimenting, they're running proofs of concept, using pilots. We're going to be leveraging a lot of that. And then we've got this amazing DeFi ecosystem. So, the structure of change is happening, and we're right in the middle of it. And it's very, very exciting and just a little bit scary. But Hedera is applying itself to every layer, and whereas some protocols, are very specific because of the constraints of the technology, Hedera has no such constraints, and it's very regulator friendly. All the work that the Hedera LLC are doing with the policymakers, with outreach to organizations and associations globally to get access to their policy relationships. Influencing and having a seat at the table is really important, because once those points of friction are removed, we're very well placed at every layer within that that structure that I just talked about. That wasn't a shark bite, was it? That's just like a
Good enough.
feeding
Well,
frenzy.
it's a future with a lot of potential. Now, I do want to thank everybody who's dropping their questions. If you do want to get your questions in, the way it's going to get priority is using the HTS 20 standard. You'll see the instructions up on the screen right now. If you want to go the easy route, you can certainly drop your questions down below, either in the YouTube video or on X. Rob, thank you as always for coming on today. We really appreciate your insights.
My pleasure, Brandon. See you next week.
Rob, we actually had one more thing that we wanted to hit up. What do you got for us?
My T-shirt. So this is an amazing. I've seen this actually. I think I've seen you wearing it. It's the hashtag ABFT. Batty Hattie's work, which is amazing. We love the pixel drops. In fact, they're working on Pixel Drop 2, I think. Hattie herself, I think, is responsible for some of these amazing pixel arts. So just want to shout out to the Batty Hattie crew and say thank you very much.
Huge shout out to Batty Hattie.
Cheers.
Rob, thanks again. So, Zep, of course, it's great to catch up with Rob. You are the boss. He is the boss. But we want to keep those questions rolling in, so keep dropping those questions down below. But we are going to, again, shift gears here a little bit. We're going to get into Karate Combat because they have a huge event that's going to be coming up next week. I want to remind everybody, make sure that if you have your karate tokens on DeFi or wherever they might be on a centralized exchange, make sure you get them into your karate app before next Wednesday. That's when the snapshot's going to be taken to make sure that you can participate in their up-only gaming. If you haven't participated in up-only gaming in the past, make sure you do that because it is addictive. It's so much fun. But there's other stuff that's going on as well. We mentioned last week that the founder of Brave was saying how much of a fan he is of Karate Combat, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think, one of the biggest possible sort of backings Christ could have got from within Web3, Brave, I think, over 50 million active users, and the founder came out saying that the most compelling uses for a token he thinks that exists on the market are BATS, which is for Brave Browser, his own product, of course, and then secondly, Karate for Karate Combat. So that's, it's not a statement you can draw from a founder of that capacity very easily. And so obviously he's very, very impressed with the karate ecosystem.
And the Brave browser, just as a browser, is just really useful. It's a great browser, just in general. And now they have ads running for karate. So that it's really exciting to see. We also saw something that I wasn't expecting at all. And this was on the Instagram of UFC Fight Pass. I believe, now I'm not involved with UFC Fight Pass. I haven't used it in the past, but it's like a 24/7 showing everything from the UFC past fights, commentary on fights that are coming up and so forth. But they're going to be carrying, now it's not completely official, but I got it from a pretty good source, that they're going to be carrying all of the Karate Combat fights. This is huge, just exposing it to a lot of new people, obviously fight fans, exposing them to up-only gaming, because if they're watching the fights, they're going to hear a lot about up-only gaming. And we thought about UFC and Karate Combat as competitors. The fact that they look like they're being collaborators is huge. So I'm just really excited about that. The last thing on Karate Combat that I want to touch on is Michael Bisping. I've said in the past how fight fans are really impressed by Karate Combat, and you can't get much bigger than Michael Bisping, former UFC champion at, I think it was middleweight. He was a champion. And one of the other things is he's a good talker, right? He has his own podcast and all that kind of stuff, and he's going to be going to Karate Combat 44. So I have a quick clip of him talking about it. Check it out.
Karate Combat, I absolutely love this. I'm like, this looks awesome. You were like, Bisping, we're going to get you to an event. I saw you promoting some like wild party at a big house in Miami. I was like, we're going to Miami. We're going to the party. And then like, no, you're going international. You're going through the borders. I got to do all that shit and fly to Mexico. I'm very grateful, by the way. I've never been to Miami. And I thought, we're going to Miami, baby. Let's go.
Man.
Listen, I love a good night out. I love a good reason to go to Mexico City. And I love Karate Combat.
So it's great to see Michael Bisping being a huge fan of Karate Combat, and I can't wait to see what it looks like with him pit side there at Karate Combat 44. Now, the next thing, we're going to go ahead and take another one of our hard left turns here. We're going to get into AI. Now, the first principles that Manson Lehman did this past week was on AI, and we also saw a story come out. It was in German, but now it's easy enough to translate all that into English. It was around Equity Labs, and it was around Accenture. So the story led off saying, Equity is building on the Hedera blockchain a solution for AI companies that allows them to track the characteristics of LLMs and provide transparency on how they are trained and function. And then the second bullet point is from Accenture, who we talked about McKinsey, one of the largest consulting firms in the world last week in relation to Hedera. And now we're talking about one of the other largest consulting firms, Accenture. Accenture is testing the solution, and if found viable, it will be implemented for the consulting giant's global clientele, which includes dozens of Fortune 100 companies. Zep, how does something like this fly under the radar? Accenture is an absolute monster, but what are your thoughts around what we saw come out around this?
Yeah, I mean, what's exciting, I think, about this sort of AI, sort of trust layer use case for Hedera is that we haven't really seen any live productions on other distributed ledgers to fulfill this purpose. And the more innovation that's coming out in AI, we saw yesterday, I believe, OpenAI come out with their new text to video model. It becomes more and more clear that we need some kind of consensus over what is authentic, right? With text to video, you could have someone create a video of Donald Trump saying something that could skew an election. You could have whatever it is. But the same goes with language models. You have to be able to verify the data they're trained on, so that these AI models aren't sort of spouting disinformation as the truth. And as more and more people move into a world whereby, AI models are the new Google, people are going to be leaving what these AI models say just at face value, right? They're not going to be digging deep into what data it's trained on. So we have to have a trust layer for them so that all of the data it's fed on, all the data it then creates or at least puts out into the world for us to digest, is also based on truthful material. And for Hedera specifically, of course, the Hedera consensus service is almost best in class for this kind of use case, almost purpose fit. Of course, Dr. Lehman Baird's PhD in AI, and then also created the hash graph. It's almost like it was built for this kind of future use case. And so this, like we said, is one of the first AI authenticity trust layers in crypto. It's on Hedera, picked up by Accenture. And I really think this is a use case that Hedera could front run and lead. And in enterprise as well, we know that all the enterprises are looking at AI. We know that all of them want to be able to trust the AI that they're using. And so I really think this could be the start of something special for Hedera.
Absolutely. The other place where I see DLT being useful for AI with collaboration with AI is under royalties, because we know a huge issue around AI right now is intellectual property. It's not an issue as long as the people that own the intellectual property, whether that's written, whether that's art, whatever it may be, is properly compensated. And using DLT, using cryptocurrency, they could be properly compensated. So I'm excited to see that as well. Now, sticking with AI, I already mentioned that the main focus of this week's first principles was around AI, but I actually caught something else. I was really interested with what Lehman had to say around robotics, and I think it leads into exponential technologies in general. So we'll listen to that real quick.
So these technologies are complementary. I mean, robots.
They are. Yeah. Sure. And of course, when I have Siri being better, I'll put the Siri inside the robot. I'll be able to command the robot and talk to it. But it's not, the revolutionary thing is not that. The revolutionary thing is being able to have a factory entirely populated by robots. If it's building cars, it makes the cars cheaper. But you could also put them in a factory building the robots, which makes the robots cheaper. But now they're being built by cheaper robots, which makes the robots cheaper. But now their robots are cheaper. So they're being built by even more cheaper robots. And you get this cycle.
Yeah.
And so you get this wonderful cyclic thing where it gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper until it comes down to the cost of raw materials, which comes to the cost of mining. But we can have robots doing that. So the mining becomes cheaper. So the robots become even more cheaper. So now the mining becomes even more cheaper. A virtuous cycle there. Robots really are going to be a big deal in the very near future, starting with humanoids. Someday we'll have lots of dog-shaped and spider-shaped and so on. But right now, it's humanoids because they can get into human vehicles and use human hand tools and do everything humans do, fit through doors and everything.
So, Zep, just like robots can create this feedback loop, this positive feedback loop in efficiency, I think we can see the same thing with these exponential technologies. And I'm talking about robotics, I'm talking about AI, I'm talking about DLT. When you have all these different things working together, I think the amount of productivity we could see come out of the economy in the next 10 years could be mind-blowing. But we'll see how it all turns out. All right, so the next thing we're going to get into is Seaplify. And I know there's been a lot of friction within the Hedera community. And, I have nothing to do with the HBAR Foundation prioritization, but I do, because this is all around the credentialing for the maritime industry. And as many people know, I am a licensed master. I was a ship captain. These are just my licenses, right? These are my unlimited master licenses. I have one for the Coast Guard. I have one for Panama. I have one for the Marshall Islands. That's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to credentialing. You have tons of other stuff, radar and ARPA and lifeboatmen and fast rescue boat, high angle rescue training, firefighting. I could literally go on for probably 10 minutes going through all the credentials that I have. They're very hard to manage. I have a binder that's about this thick with all my different credentials, and you have to have the originals, which are stamped, embossed, all that kind of stuff. Now, what Seaplify is going to do is going to manage all of those things and make it much easier to verify. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. We just found, or the HBAR Foundation found a team that was motivated, that wanted to dip into this credentialing space. But the maritime industry is fairly small. They talk about how we need an additional 86,000 merchant mariners, or not merchant mariners, but officers in that space over the next however many years. But this could be transferred over to the entire education industry. This could be, we have credentialing in, the medical field. I mean, we could go down the line. So Zeb, considering how big this could be for all of the credentials out there, for all of the different industries, it does make sense to tap into a passionate team that wants to do this as a proof of concept. And then hopefully we can use that, again, as a proof of concept for all of these other industries. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and move into some network analysis. So in terms of throughput, we're still cruising along at about 1,300 transactions per second on the Hedera network, and had an impressive spike to over 7,500 TPS while still maintaining a time to finality of 3.2 seconds. Account growth was on fire this week with over 75,000 created and over 100,000 active accounts. Moving down to our fungible tokens, Wrapped, HBAR, and Karate take the top 2 spots, followed by a couple of our meme coins, Grelf and Unlucky. Next up, we have Sauce, USDC, Zenny's Xbucks, and the top 10 is rounded out by Calaxy, Dovu, and Energy Trade Token. Looking at our NFTs, the Lithos Rant CPU card packs took 4 out of the top 10 spots. The Road Code 2024 Access card got bumped from the top spot, but not too far. It's sitting there at number 2. Next up, we have an Unlucky NFT and a Sauce liquidity provider token. And the top 10 is rounded out by the Times, the Not a Slime World NFT, and Zero. So Zeb, do you have any thoughts on the NFT front this week?
Yeah, so since Hashpack announced the Pack token, their own Hashpack collection of special NFTs that they launched a while ago have gone through the roof. In the last 24 hours, they've already done about 500,000 HBAR volume, I believe. And given that, the floor of these are about 155 HBAR each, that's a significant amount of sales in the last 24 hours. And that's actually seemed to have given energy to the Dead Pixels, which has now gone up 290% volume in the last 24 hours. So it looks like we're getting some renewed energy because of Hashpack there.
Very impressive. We want that NFT ecosystem to be vibrant. And, talking about the HBAR airdrops in the beginning, I still want the NFT airdrops to be out there, but I would like them to be tweaked a little bit. What I would like to see is still have HBAR weighted airdrops, but if you have a certain NFT that's strategic for your platform, go ahead and apply an extra 10% or something for that airdrop. But I do want to make sure that the NFT ecosystem stays strong. But with that, let's go ahead and get into some DeFi. We had a really impressive move in the total value locked in the Hedera DeFi ecosystem to just under $100 million, thanks in no small part to Saucer Swap's Sauce having a 50% upward move to around 12 cents. and Saucer Swap currently makes up over $96 million of our TVL. Now, of course, HBAR Suite is not included in the DeFi Llama numbers here, and if you add that in, I'm sure we're well over 100 million. Taking a look at the returns on some of Saucer Swap's popular trading pairs, HBAR X version 1 is at 5.8%, HBAR Sauce V1 is at 22%, and V2 is at 56%. HBAR USDC V1 is at 28%, V2 at 51%, and HBAR Karate is at 52%. Over on HeliSwap, HBAR Heli is at 81%, 15% on HBAR USDC, and 12% on HBAR Karate. Crypto had a decent week with Bitcoin up 9%, but flat over the past day. HBAR is up nearly 8% on the week and up slightly on the day to 8.4 cents. We tested resistance at 8.6 cents and had a small rejection, and I'd expect to see support at around 8.2 cents. All right, Zep, that's pretty much all we have for this week. Do you have anything else you'd like to pass on?
Yeah, so I mean, this week, obviously, the two highlights were Mondelez joining the council, again ratifying us as, the leading DLT in these sort of supply chain based use cases that require a huge amount of scale, and also, the trust and transparency of the council to enable these people to actually, make their break into Web3. So that in itself, massive, 33% of the global, confectionery market is under Mondelez, massive supply chain, working with SKUX, we've known about for a while. And then you compound that with the community element, which of course has been led this week by Hashpack, announcing the launch of their Pack token, which I'm sure is going to have massive ramifications for our HTS economy. Then you combine that with the airdrop of Earthlings, of course, and the referral program of Calaxy, and it feels like we got some really good momentum building in both the community and again the enterprise. So both cylinders this week, and really excited to see what we see next week.
Yeah, super exciting. I have a lot going on next week. Now, the AR Rahman, that space has been postponed. It might be this weekend. It might be later off in the future. I have Kamal that I'm going to be interviewing early next week about the Saudi investment. So that's going to be really big. Of course, we're going to have Bobby from SKUX to give us the details on the mechanics of what they're doing with Mondelez. I do want to figure out the proper way to pronounce that. Is it Mondelez? Is it Mondelez? I've heard it both ways. So we'll try to nail that down as well. We're going to, of course, have Shark Bites next week, so drop your questions down there in the comments for Rob. And then there's one other thing. I have Dane coming on, of course, for Karate Combat 44. We're going to go through and try to give you some tips on your up-only gaming. That's all we have. We'll see you next week.